Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Dr. Nikki Davis with Lifestyle Telemedicine, and I am so excited that today I'm going to be sitting down with the Heather McDougall. And we're going to learn a little bit more about Heather. So Heather, for her, the McDougall Program is not just a job, right? It's a lifelong calling rooted in family, love, and a deep belief in the power of food to heal. So today we're going to be having more of a casual, candid conversation with Heather about life as Dr. John McDougall's daughter, the experiences that shaped her, and what it means to continue a legacy that has transformed thousands of lives. And plus, we're going to hear about what the 12-day program looks like through her eyes. And of course, their next 12-day program is coming up this Friday. It starts on the 17th. And so there is still time to sign up if you're interested in joining the next McDougall program, Immersion. And it looks like, just so you guys know, it looks like we are failing to go live on Facebook. So unfortunately, that's not going to work today. But YouTube and Instagram and LinkedIn are still going to work. All right. Well, welcome here, Heather. It's so nice to see you. How are you?
Thanks, Nikki. It's really great to be here. I'm doing well. Excited to share a bit of my story.
Yeah, great. Well, why don't we start out with seeing like where people are watching from? Um, let's see. I'm assuming that you've got some nice weather where you are in California, right?
Oh, it's beautiful today, although all weekend long it poured down rain, which was wonderful. We need the water, but now it's sunshine and blue sky.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's really beautiful spring weather here in Salt Lake City, Utah as well. Um, and we did have some rain over the weekend too. I was just doing, I was down in southern Utah with my son for his spring break in Escalante, Utah, which is just gorgeous. I don't know if you know much about southern Utah, but we have like Bryce Canyon, Capitol Reef, Zion National Park, all of those places where it just almost looks like you're on Mars. It's so beautiful.
That's one of the places that I've always wanted to visit and haven't yet been. So maybe when I get there, I'll look you up. We can meet.
Definitely. Yeah. No, it's such a beautiful area, and just the hiking is incredible. We went on a slot canyon hike. So, you're walking between these tall slot canyon walls, and then there's just a stream that goes all the way through the middle that you're just following this water as you go through. It's just unreal.
Wow. Yeah, my
Yeah.
husband and I talk about, taking like an RV and going around the United States. There's so many beautiful places to see and visit. And, you often think about leaving the country to go exploring, but there's so many places just right in our own backyard. So
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
we're pretty
All
lucky.
right. Well, thank you everyone for watching today from wherever you're watching from. And if you do have questions that come up as we're chatting, feel free to type those in the chat from wherever you're watching from. And we will, if we have a chance to, we'll try to get to whatever questions that we can. All right. So starting out, Heather, I would love to hear just kind of, what it was like for you growing up as Dr. John McDougall's daughter. What did like dinner conversation look like in your house? What was it like growing up in that environment? And I guess how early on did your parents make those changes to their own lifestyles? Was that something that was just something that you were familiar with from the time that you can remember, or were you around for the change?
So the change happened very early on when I was about 2. That's when my dad started coming home and was like, Mary, we need to get rid of all the meat, and then if you do some more research and a few weeks later, it's like, Mary, we need to get rid of all the dairy. And then they added oils. And so it was sort of an evolution that I was very aware of, how my food was changing and, the fact that we ate different from all my friends and everyone out there. You have to think back, 50, I'm 52 now. So 50 years ago, how different things were in the plant-based world. Hardly anybody was eating this way. So
Yeah.
I was very aware how different we were. But I also, my dad, he's all about education. And so he was about teaching us kids too, how powerful food was and what the effects were, of the typical American diet on our health. And so we were really aware of, cause and effect of different foods. It didn't make it any easier, being kind of the weird kid, the kid that no one would trade lunches with. I didn't appreciate my dad back then. You're just a kid, he's your dad. But now, looking back and seeing just how much he did, and how many doors and walls he had to break through, when he was just kind of like one of the lone people out there, preaching the benefits of a starch-based diet. So now I am so proud and so honored to be carrying on his legacy. I see how much he's done and how much he's accomplished, and it's really quite amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, considering that this started before you could even really remember, as this change that was happening in your family, did what were the conversations like regarding your food when you were younger? Do you remember them talking to you about why you ate this way and why you ate differently than other people?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it really was about education. It was not, you're not going to eat this. It's why aren't you going to eat this? What these foods do to your body. They're full of fat and cholesterol and toxins, and they don't contain fiber and, all starch and all the nutrients that we need. And so there was a lot of conversations about food and understanding what certain foods did to our body. And, as we started getting older, we started understanding, like, we would realize that our friends many of them were constipated and we never were, or, they struggled with their weights, they always wore t-shirts when they went in the pool. That was never an issue with us. And then as I started getting older, acne, bad complexions, and just, as a teenage girl, being concerned about her weight, and so understanding, cause and effect was really, really important. And so my dad would just kind of appeal to our vanity as children.
Yeah.
You want to have lots of energy. You don't want to sit on the toilet for a long time. You want to have a clear complexion. You don't want to worry about your weight. These are the things that you need to do. So it was a lot about education, not, being the policeman. It was, really informing us about our food choices. And, we ate this way at home. And then when we were out of the house, we could make our own food choices. So, we would order things that I'm sure my dad was just, cringing when we ordered them, but he wanted us to understand, and try those foods and realize a lot of the time those foods made us feel horrible. And so I think that was really important to, let us experience and learn about these foods and how they made us feel, rather than just telling us, no, you can't eat that. Because as soon as you get outside of the house and you're making your own food choices, you're going to go in the opposite direction if your whole life you've been, set on this one path by force, rather than understanding. So that was really important for my parents. And that's how I raised my boys as well. It's just education, information, and then make your own decisions.
Yeah, I think that's such a smart way of going about it. And I have to say, I unfortunately did not know that that was the best way. And so, because I'm so passionate about this lifestyle and this way of eating, I wanted that to be, I wanted my son to be healthy from the beginning. And, that was the kind of food that I provided to him. But as he got older, it did feel like, well, this is how you eat and you can't eat those things, right? And so, of course, now I'm getting the pushback. But I'm still trying. I'm doing my best to just say, okay, you get to make your own decisions now, but here's why we eat the way we do at my home, right? And
Yeah.
then hopefully as he gets older, he'll see those differences. And we've had, just like you mentioned, some of those things that teenagers or kids are concerned with, like how they look, if they have acne, if their friends have acne, and talking about, well, boy, dairy is such a big problem with acne, that if your friends are eating a lot of dairy products, that could be something that's causing that to happen. And if you start eating a lot of dairy products, you might start noticing that in yourself, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's just so powerful, is knowing how certain foods can affect, the way you look or your health is, just such a incredible gift that we can give to our kids. And so I'm so grateful that my parents did that with us, and, allowed us to experiment and make our own choices, but with education behind us, and knowledge and research behind us every step of the way.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Okay, so then, was there ever a time when you felt like this difference, in your family and how your family lived versus everyone around, at school and all your friends? Did you ever feel like it was something that you were missing out on and that you resented that at all? Did you go through a period of that?
Well, I don't know if it was missing out on, but I felt like, I mean, we grew up in Hawaii. And so it was a very small island. And so, my dad was doing lectures and potlucks and radio shows and TV shows. And so, a lot of people knew who he was and, of course, who his children were. So there was just a lot of attention on Dr. McDougall's kids and what we were eating and what we were doing. And so I don't know if I resented it. It was just, I didn't appreciate it. I didn't,
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy all that attention, but you just kind of get used to it. And, looking back, I understand what it was all about. But it's different when you're a kid, you have a very different perspective. So, um, yeah, I had a different childhood, being Dr. McDougall's daughter. It was just different. Yeah,
Yeah. So,
I'm grateful, but
yeah, right. Well, so I guess, that's interesting. So, do you feel like from an early age you realized that there was this kind of like almost like celebrity as part of your family, like you felt like an important family?
well, I don't know if important is the right word, but he was certainly getting a lot of attention. And back then, not a whole lot of people were talking about eating, starches and plants and how that is really the cause of many dietary or disease. And so, he was, people would call him a quack and, say he was crazy. And, so he was getting a lot of attention and, speaking out about things that he knew were right, backed by research, but not a lot of people were supporting what he was saying. So it was tough. It's hard to see your dad out there, speaking about something that he believes so strongly in. And the majority of, professional medical professionals, scientists, or maybe not scientists, but a lot of people are telling him he's wrong and that diet has nothing to do with your health, and so that's hard to see,
Yeah.
when your dad is fighting for something,
So
so
then I
hard.
Yeah, and so I assume that as you got older, it was probably even more difficult because you're getting maybe people talking to you about, "Oh," I don't know, did you get any
I
of
think it
that
got
kind of?
easier. It got
Oh,
easier because
really?
I started to realize, this guy really knows what he's talking about. And, more and more, medical professionals, people in this world started saying the exact same thing when my dad was saying, and more research was backing what he was saying. So I just felt like he was being validated,
Mm,
so, it's like finally people are listening and, he's getting the recognition that he deserves. So
yeah,
I think it got easier as I got older because I
yeah,
could really, really hear what he was saying and, understand what he's been doing all these years. So yeah, I think it was a good thing.
yeah, and so then I would assume that you were able to see this kind of change from a lot of people maybe saying, like you said, he's a quack, he doesn't know what he's talking about, to then the research is, we're continuing to get more and more research that's coming out, and more people are starting to notice that this is probably a better way of eating. And then also, as he starts to work with people and seeing the changes that patients are, having improvements in their lifestyles and regaining their health, seeing that transition, is that something that you noticed, that there was just, more and more people were listening and understanding what he was teaching?
Well, that's another, I mean, we were a very close family. So we spent so much time at my dad's office, seeing patients. We would go to his potlucks, his lectures around town. And so we were always there hearing from his patients, hearing from people that had adopted this lifestyle, started eating more starches, more plants, and just how their lives had transformed. People would come up to my dad and we were standing there and tell, you changed my life. My blood pressure's down. I've lost all this weight. I feel great. cured my diabetes. It just goes on. And so you hear that time and time again, year after year. And I mean, that's pretty amazing to see. And then, books being written and conferences being held, and organizations saying that you should be eating more plants, more fiber. This is important. This really has something to do with your health. Seeing that whole evolution has just been incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
Really, really great to see everything kind of coming to fruition. I mean, my dad, he always said he wanted to change the world, and we are not even close to that point yet. But I've seen how many things have changed, and how, I don't know, the perspective for the knowledge about food as medicine has changed, and even the availability of food in grocery stores has, I mean, when I was little, there were no plant milks. Tofu you bought in like a bin. You'd have to go to a health food store to find certain items. Now that stuff's mainstream. You can find it in Target and Walmart and, Safeway and anywhere. So, it's out there and people are talking about it. So that's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say it's definitely become easier to eat a plant-based diet, but it's also become more difficult to eat a healthy plant-based diet because of all the, the processed vegan foods that are out there now that didn't used to be there,
That's
when we
true.
were younger.
That's true. That has
Um,
changed. And there's a big difference between a vegan that eats processed foods and a vegan that eats a whole food starch-based diet. Very, very different. So
yeah. Yeah. And I know that Dr. McDougall talked about that in his book, The Starch Solution, about, vegans that aren't healthy and they're not doing well. And that it's because of those processed foods and not focusing on the whole foods and the starches.
well, they can be eating just as much fat, calories, lack of fiber as people on the standard American diet, eating all the vegan junk food. So, what we teach, what we've always taught, is a whole food starch-based diet, which is, mainly water-rich cooked starches, vegetables, and fruits. That's it. No animal
Yeah.
products or free oils. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, simple, and it doesn't have to be expensive. I think a lot of people worry about the expense because they go to Whole Foods and they see the expensive packaged vegan foods, right? And they think, oh, this is incredibly expensive. And even talking about plant milks, I mean, plant milks, you know, by per size, like you get a big gallon of cow's milk, it's probably less expensive than a small, plant milk, but you can easily make it yourself. I mean, I've made oat milk where you just literally it's oats and water, you blend it up and you strain it and that's it, right? So it can be really simple too.
Oh, absolutely. When I was little, my mom would make us cashew milk because they didn't have any plant milks. So yeah,
Yeah.
you can absolutely make it yourself, but we don't really want you drinking your calories anyway. So you're really not using a lot of plant milk, a little bit in your tea or your coffee or on your oatmeal,
Yeah.
some in a soup to make it creamy. Yeah, we really want you to eat foods with the least amount of processing possible.
Yeah.
And we do, there's some packaged foods that are great, but you really want to stay away from the, super processed, hyper palatable
Yeah.
vegan junk food. That's where you really get into trouble.
Yeah. And that's where you can focus on those starches, the things that really, and I tell my patients this a lot, that when I'm looking at what am I going to eat for lunch or for dinner, I'm always thinking about what is my base, what is my starch?
Yep.
Is it going to be a sweet potato? Is it going to be a regular potato? Is it going to be, whole grains like brown rice or barley or, beans and corn or, what is it going to be that's going to fill me up? And then I add on the other stuff on top of it, because
Yep.
broccoli is incredibly nourishing and it's got great vitamins and minerals, but you don't want to eat a whole plate of steamed broccoli for lunch, right? That's not going to be satisfying. But when you add potatoes with that, then suddenly it becomes a satisfying, satiating meal.
Absolutely. In the past, people would probably think of their meat as the center of their meal, but now I tell them the same thing as you do. Think of the starch. What's your starch going to be? Is it going to be mashed potatoes? Is it going to be beans and rice? Is it going to be pasta? And those types of things, and then go from there. So.
Yeah. So Heather, tell us a little bit about, at what point did you realize that you wanted to be a bigger part of this, of the McDougall legacy? And I mean, I know it's not just the program, because basically anyone can go onto the website and learn everything that they need to know in order to follow this program. Like, you've put it all out there. Even, I have the app that has all the recipes listed in there. That's $5. It's so inexpensive, but all those recipes are also available all online for free. So everything's available out there. So you have a lot of things that you do, but you also do these, immersion programs to really help people who really want to get started on this and get going and be successful and have the support. So, and of course, all the things that your dad did, and your mom. So your dad, wrote all these books. Your mom created all these recipes. So now, I guess, kind of going back to my original question, at what point did you realize that you wanted to be now a part of this?
Well, this is a very big legacy to carry on. And
Yes.
Honestly, I never thought I would be running the business ever. But, when I look back, I think it was always kind of inevitable. I mean, in high school, I worked in my dad's medical office. I was sort of a secretary. I helped them with their adventure trips. Actually, going even further back, I worked in their, soup company back when I was 14 years old, back in Hawaii. We had a frozen food business. So I feel like I've always worked for my parents. And then my dad was doing the intensive programs at St. Helena Hospital, and he just wanted to go out on his own. He said, he's like, I want to do it my way. I want to have total control over the McDougall program. And so in May of 2002, we moved. Well, he's like, Heather, let's do this together. I'm like, okay, I've never done this before, but let's do it. So in May of 2002, we moved to Santa Rosa to the Flamingo Hotel and started running 10-day intensive programs there. And then, from there, it's just kind of been this natural evolution to just taking on more and more responsibility. And then when my dad passed away, it's been almost 2 years ago, it was just like, okay, this incredible legacy, this website that has all this information, all these recipes that my mom's created, all these articles my dad's written, all these success stories, the programs we offer, we've got to keep this going. It's just such an amazing program, and wealth of information. So, it's been my honor to just keep it going, with the website, like you said, we have the free program, totally free. We've got, mini courses. We have our subscription-based community. But then, what we really spend a lot of our time doing is the 12-day intensive that has just, with COVID, it transformed to an online program. So, and that we just haven't looked back. It's just been so great teaching people in their own homes, in their own environments, with us sort of walking with them every step of the way. So that's been great. And that's, we run those quarterly, and we take people in, and we provide them with medical care and education and support, and we provide them with a whole community. And I think that's, for a lot of people, really the key to making a lasting lifestyle change is having, the guidance, the support, the structure, the information to just really kind of hold your hand and lead you through it. And then the whole year afterward, meet with you weekly and monthly, and, really try to reinforce all those changes that we taught you in the 12 days. So it's been fun. It's been, quite a ride, but now doing what I'm doing, it's such an honor. And my mom is so happy that things are continuing as they are, and she just loves to see all of my dad's work and all of her work just, thriving and continuing to get to people. And I get emails every day from people, telling me that the programs change their lives. I've never met them. They've never done anything McDougall related other than gone to the website, maybe looked at the free program, downloaded a few recipes and started. And the results have been amazing. And they always are. That's what I tell people. When you see those commercials for like Weight Watchers, they have a little asterisk at the bottom that says results not typical. Well, these results are typical. When you change your diet, when you focus on the water-rich cooked starches, vegetables, and fruits, high fiber, low fat, the results are amazing. You lose weight, you lower your blood pressure, you reverse your diabetes, you have more energy, you sleep better, you have a better mood. It's amazing. And I never get tired of hearing about how it changes people's lives. I mean, like every program is a new program because all the people are new, and their stories are different. And it's just so much fun.
Yeah.
And I know you feel the same way, Nikki. I mean,
I do. Yeah. I mean, I can definitely vouch for that, that it is typical because that's what I get to see, not only as one of the physicians helping out with the medical care of the McDougall program, but just also just in, patients that I see through lifestyle telemedicine, that I get to see people getting better all the time. I mean, it's just so rewarding, to get to see that, to really get to see people regain their health and get off all the medications and have hope again, right? Because it can be pretty, I mean, I haven't gone through this personally, but to have a chronic illness, chronic disease, whether it's, obesity or diabetes or even high blood pressure, where you're on a medication that you're taking every day or several medications that you're taking every day. And maybe you can't walk as well as you used to, and you just don't feel as good, and you're fatigued and you're constipated and all of these different things that are just causing you to just not feel your best. That's a horrible way to live. And to think that you can switch to this way of living, this starch-based, whole food, plant-based diet, and regain that and just feel your best. And it really is a lovely way to live, right? It's delicious. You're not missing out, I promise. It's just such an amazing way to live. And I also feel like he saved my life, right? I was already on the vegan bandwagon, but it was this starch-based, whole food, oil-free that when I got to work with your dad during the live-in program in Santa Rosa in 2016, 10 years ago, that that's what really finally solidified it for me. Like this is what makes the most sense for a human diet. It's once you hear it, once you understand it, it's common sense. It just makes sense. And then you live it and you think, oh, it's just so nice not to have to worry about those extra, 10 or 15 pounds anymore, or, just not feeling your best. So it definitely changed my life. And then of course, then I just wanted to be your dad. I wanted to be able to spread this
right?
and get it out to people and let people know there's a better way. I promise. It isn't just that, oh, you've been diagnosed with this disease and now you need to take this medication for the rest of your life. I don't want people to think that. Of course, there are going to be exceptions to that. But for the most part, if it's a chronic lifestyle related disease, yeah, there's absolutely the possibility that you can reverse it and get off your medications. And we see it time and time again.
It's pretty amazing. And, you mentioned the word hope, and that's what we see all the time is people who have lost hope because they've been told, yeah, you have to be on this medication for the rest of your life. This is how you're going to feel. There's really no change in store for you. And then you learn about, a whole food starch-based diet and you start making the changes. And it's just, you see people's, expressions light up. You can see the hope in their faces and in the way they talk and, hope for the future. And so that is the best gift ever, to feel that and receive that from people over and over again. That's why we do what we do.
Right?
Mhm.
Exactly. It's not just a business that you've taken over, a family business that you've taken over. It really is this incredible legacy that you get to see all these people living better lives.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
amazing. After my dad passed away, I mean the emails and the cards
mm,
and the
I
I
bet.
mean just all the stories of how he changed their lives. You know, he'd never met them, and they read his book or they went to the website, and you know the results were just amazing. And events I've been to since he passed away, people have been coming up to me telling me stories in tears, and it's just so heartwarming. It just makes me feel so good. And you know that we are receiving that, and I let my mom know about all of it too. And it's so wonderful to you know just to learn all of that about my dad. Even though I knew it,
Yeah,
it's just really great to hear it over and over again.
yeah. So, tell us a little bit about the 12-day program. I know you mentioned it briefly, kind of, that it includes like medical support and education, and then also just ongoing support from like your support specialists. But kind of walk us through, so you're doing it quarterly. It's 12 days long, and what do those days look like? Just kind of walk us through like what it looks like.
So we keep you pretty busy, but we don't want you to spend too much time in front of your computer. So we sort of break the day up into two sections. But you'd check in with your support specialist every day and give a morning report. So that would be blood pressure, blood sugar if you're diabetic, weight if you have an appointment with your doctor, and then just general well being. And then we have a morning chat, and that'll be with someone from the McDougall team talking about a very casual conversation about blood pressure or cholesterol or maybe even a cooking demo. And then we have our morning session, and that is generally a medical topic. So it'll be you, Dr. Davis, talking about lifestyle medicine, or Dr. Lim, Anthony Lim, talking about bone health. And then we have a break. Oh no, and then we have a lunch meetup, and that's a chance for everyone in the class to get together and share stories and recipes and just meet others on your journey. You know, I think a big part of making this lifestyle change is getting enveloped into a community, just sort of feeling like you're not alone. Because a lot of times, you know, you're the only person in your household or in your town that's eating this way. So it's really nice to have a group of people who are on the same journey as you are, you know, going through the same struggles, same triumphs as you are. So that is a lunch midday meetup, and then we meet back at 3 p.m. Pacific for another session, and that could be a cooking demo or a lecture by Dr. Doug Lyle on willpower. But we really try to get at every aspect of making a lifestyle change in these 12 days, you know, from cooking, shopping, stocking your pantry, to exercise. We have functional fitness classes. We talk about behavior. We really want you to, you know, have all the knowledge, you know, that we really think is important into understanding why you should make the lifestyle change. And then all the tools that you need to actually put it into practice. And then with the year of support afterwards, you have one-on-one meetings with your support specialist weekly and then monthly for the full year. And then there are like weekly meetings you can have, all sorts of opportunities to check in with your community. So, you know, it's really nice to, again, feel like you're not alone. And there's a lot of people supporting you on this journey, because there's a lot of noise out there, and, you know, not a lot of things that are supporting a whole food starch-based lifestyle. And so we have to create that on our own, you know, meal planning, batch cooking, going to the right kinds of restaurants, knowing how to order, you know, those types of things. You know, just learning how to live in this environment that's not necessarily set up for us really ensures your success.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think, you touched on so many things there that you're not only getting the education of why why we recommend this way of eating and the research that goes into why we make these recommendations. So this isn't just something that we came up with, right? We've got lots and lots of research over many, many years of why this is the best diet for humans. But then on top of that, you've got the support from people who are actually living the lifestyle and have been successful at living this lifestyle for a long period of time. And that's everyone on the staff with the McDougall program, all the doctors, right? We are all living this way. And so you get to not only learn from these specialists in this way of eating, but also you get to kind of pick their brains and like, well, what works for you? Because of course, this lifestyle is going to be a little different for everyone, depending on what your home life looks like, your work schedule, what do you have available to you in your town? So it's nice to get the perspective of a lot of different people who've been eating this way for a long time.
Well, that's why one of the reasons why this program is so great, because we have lots of people that come into the program, knowing about McDougall and knowing about this type of lifestyle, but not quite getting it right, maybe not getting the results that they're looking for. So, coming into the program and, learning how to tweak things a little and being able to really get into, what might be, not going quite right, and really being able to have the whole team, looking at your case and really trying to, get it tailored just for you, because you're right. There's the McDougall program, but there's also the, McDougall maximum weight loss program. And there's, the Mary's Mini, and there's the elimination diet. And, there's, depending on what sort of, health challenge you're facing, there might be some additional tweaks that you need to be making in your diet. And that's what we help with.
Yeah. And then and it's just been such a pleasure to be able to help out as one of the physicians on the program, because, getting to see people really motivated, making these changes, seeing those improvements, but also because I've been doing lifestyle medicine for some period of time now, I am very familiar with how quickly we need to make changes with medications and things that I would say, if you're working as a physician in a conventional clinic, you don't typically see people making these significant changes and seeing these significant improvements so quickly. And because that is something that I experience all the time, and something I learned from your dad, is really, you got to be on top of it, and you've got to be making those medication changes, knowing what is typical, like we talked about, that we see these changes, we see these improvements very typically. So we know that, for instance, in people who are on insulin for diabetes, that they're going to be needing to decrease that. If they're on blood pressure medications, we're going to need to decrease that pretty quickly, because then you can become over medicated if you don't get on top of that. And I've had plenty of patients come to me who've started making changes on their own, and they're not getting that support from their local doctor because their doctor just isn't looking for that, right? That's just not something that they see often.
Or they're not
And so then,
comfortable taking the patient off medicine. Lots of doctors
right,
are like, no, just take some more.
exactly. And that's the other thing, is because they're so used to having people stay on it forever, that they just don't even consider that, boy, should I even ask this patient if they're getting dizzy every time they stand up, right? Well, that could happen if you're over medicated for your blood pressure. But so the doctors that I work with, all of us, we're very familiar with that. And so it's, by doing a program like this, you're getting everything you need to be successful. And on top of that, you're being safe. If you're on medications and you need to make medication changes, you've got doctors who are very familiar with doing that.
Well, yeah, a good portion of the people that come through our 12-day intensive need to come off of medications. And so that's why they're doing it, because they want the support, they want the guidance of, our medical team, and, really that backing. And so it's just so great to see you, who's so comfortable with this, and I think a lot of that just comes with practice, working with my
Absolutely.
dad, seeing him do it with such confidence and seeing
Yeah.
the results and how well people did. And then having, the last 10 years to really see, how this lifestyle works and transforms people's lives. So it's really, it's fun to hear you talk about how you take people off medication, because you sound just like my dad, and I love that. But
Well,
that's the
and
goal, get you off of all unnecessary medications. Most
yeah,
people are over medicated. So
yeah. And it's interesting that you say, with some doctors, that they get nervous about taking people off medications. And I would say that that's true, because, back before working with your dad, I would feel that way. I felt like, but they need this. What if their blood pressure shoots up or their blood sugar shoots up? It makes me nervous to take them off the medication. But now I'm the opposite, where it makes me nervous to keep them on it because of the possible side effects you can get from being over medicated. And I still find that some of my patients kind of push back against that. So, of course, I get people coming to me all the time saying, my goal is to get off these medications. But when I say, well, I think we could stop this one today, how do you feel about that? It's like, could maybe we do a
I've been
half
told I was going
dose
to stay on this my whole life.
Yeah, so even the patients themselves can get nervous because they've been on the medication for 30 years or 20 years, right? And they think, but is this safe? Can I really get off this medication? And so yeah, so it does take a little bit of that education, and it took me a while of watching your dad. And I know just especially during the live-in program that I got to be a medical student, watching him sitting in on the appointments that he was having with patients, that really helped me to gain that confidence of knowing what to expect, knowing the typical outcomes and being prepared for that. That definitely helped. And then of course, now that I've been doing this for the last 6 years, just working solely as a lifestyle medicine physician, I've gotten really comfortable with that and kind of knowing when to make those changes. But it took me a while too, so I can understand where, people are asking their doctors, well, can't I just get off this medication? That, a lot of times the doctor's going to be nervous about that, and they're not going to feel like that's something that can be done ever.
Yeah, just because it's not something that's talked about.
Right. Yeah. Can you tell us about maybe a couple of, you've gotten, I'm sure, so many stories of people who've improved their health over the years, not only having been through the program, but also just people who found the McDougall program, or just the way of, the starch solution and things like that online, and just following your mother's recipes, whether they've gone through the program or not. I'm sure you've had so many improvement stories that you've heard. Do you mind sharing just a couple that, either whether they're a long time ago or recent, or?
Well, I think the ones that get me the most are the ones, people that have autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, because that change is so drastic and happens so quick, where people, can't walk very well or can't get up out of their chair. And, 12 days later, they're dancing around the room, playing the piano, being able to move their fingers. So those types of stories are really amazing. People with MS who, I remember meeting a woman back when my dad had his medical practice in Santa Rosa, who, basically stopped the progression of her disease. And, her doctors were telling her that, basically what her future was. And it was incredibly bleak, wheelchair or bedridden in 10 years. And she stopped the progression and, ended up, as far as I know, living a normal life. So, I think, and even just the stories about weight loss, people that have lost an incredible amount of weight, who thought there was something wrong with them, who thought they had an eating disorder, but it was, really just not eating the right kinds of foods, and how, that's transformed their life. So, I get emails every day from people, and it's just, it makes us feel so good. So, I got an email from someone just the other day who is an older gentleman who's sailing the world on a sailboat, and he had RA and was, planning his future, basically bedridden. And he has spent the last, 7 years, I think, sailing the world on his catamaran, and he attributes that to my dad. So those sort of things are just, really touching. People that I've never met, that, the course of their life has been completely altered just because they, read a book by my dad or heard him speak, and just, thought they'd try this crazy diet, full of starches and vegetables and fruits, and see what happens. And that's what I tell people. It's like, just try it for 30 days, see what happens. It can't hurt. Eating more
Exactly.
fiber, more vegetables. That's not a bad thing. So just try it out, see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's such a good way to have people just try it out. Just yeah, like just jump in and give it a go. And if it doesn't work out for you and doesn't you don't like it, you can go back to what you were doing before. But it works. That's what we see, right? People
Yeah.
don't want to go back because it does work.
And just keep it simple. Like, you don't have to come up with a whole bunch of different recipes, just have oatmeal for breakfast, make a big pot of soup or like beans and rice or, just something simple. And you could eat that, over and over again until you get bored and then just, switch it up. So, I don't want people to have to spend a lot of time in the kitchen or buy all these, weird ingredients. Keep it as simple as you can stand it in the beginning while you're learning and then just build from there.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. Because I love cooking and I do love following recipes, but for the most part, my day to day is pretty simple. It's usually like a sweet potatoes and cauliflower or broccoli or something like that. Something really rice and beans with some veggies on the side. So it's really not complicated, and I always make sure that I've got stuff ready to go in my freezer and my pantry, right? So it doesn't always have to be
Absolutely.
fresh.
Yep, just pull it out and heat it up.
Yep,
You always want to have
exactly.
food available to eat when you're hungry and until you're comfortably full. We don't want you to be hungry. We don't want you to be portion control, counting
Right.
calories, any of that stuff. So just, eat when you're hungry, the right kind of food.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, I'm just going to open it up just for the last few minutes that we have here. If people have any questions, feel free. Let's see. Looks like somebody had a question. Oh, about spending time in Hawaii with him. Yes, of course. You grew up in
Oh,
Hawaii with
me? Oh,
your,
yeah. I lived in
yeah.
Hawaii till I was 14. So
Okay,
born and
yeah.
raised there. And we moved to California in the 80s because of the St. Helena Hospital program that my dad started. He was commuting, like flying from Hawaii to California to do those programs. And that just became unsustainable. And we all wanted to move to California. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know if my dad would have, gotten to the same place or at least in the same amount of time if he hadn't started out at the sugar plantations in Hawaii, because that's where he was able to witness, first, second, third, fourth generation, these families that had different levels of dietary or disease. And, he saw the correlation between what they were eating and their
Yeah.
health. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I know it does. It makes you wonder if you hadn't been there, how things would have been different.
right. Well, certainly if he hadn't have had his stroke, I mean, he was going to be going into hotel
Right.
restaurant management, and he had the stroke and he thought, oh, I want to be a doctor. I
Yeah.
can do this.
Yeah. And I'm just so grateful that he did. I mean, obviously it's changed your life, it's changed my life, and I'm sure so many people who are watching and just all the thousands of people who've ever just come across all the information that's out there that
Yeah, it's wild
he and
how
your mom have
things
helped out
things
with.
happen and just sort of, point you in a certain direction. So,
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I'll see if we have any other questions that come in, but maybe just one more question for you. Um, who would you say would be the ideal person for the 12-day program specifically? And the reason I'm bringing this up is that the next 12-day program, so you do them quarterly, and the next one is starting on Friday.
are they?
So there is still a chance that if you wanted to sign up for the program, you could. So who would be the ideal candidate, and who might not realize that they need it?
Oh my goodness. It really depends. I mean, I think, there's a person that is on, so many medications, bag of pills, and is just tired of living that way. That's just wanting to do something different and, something that their doctors have been telling them is not possible. And so, that would be the perfect candidate. My dad would always say, the sicker you are, the better you do. And that's true in a lot of ways. You stop attacking the body with all the bad foods, bad lifestyle choices, and it's amazing how quickly the body will heal. But then there's the person that's been struggling with their weight and thinks that there's something wrong with them, and they're just not doing it right, or they need to eat less. And just, don't have the life that they are looking for. And so, that would be a perfect candidate because, we can help you, discover what foods you need to be eating to lose the weight, and really help you make a lifestyle change and give you that support. And then there's the people that I mentioned that, think they know the McDougall program, but, just aren't losing weight or aren't, seeing their blood sugars drop. Those types of people I think need a little bit of extra support, extra hand holding because, they aren't doing it quite right. I can't tell you how many people come to the program saying, oh, I'm doing it 100%, but I haven't lost a pound.
Yeah.
It's like, well, let's look at it, let's look at it a little bit and see exactly what you're eating. And, it more often than not turns out that there's some calorie dense foods that are, sneaking into their diet that are really making a big difference. And so those types of things. So I don't know if there's a perfect patient. I think it's, someone that's just willing to think outside of the box and, wants to get their health back and their life back and, live a life, full of energy and not, worrying about their weight or, when their next doctor's appointment is or how many pills they need to take each day, that type of thing, and just living their best life. So, I don't know if there is a perfect patient.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that was really helpful. All right. We do have a couple of questions that we'll try to squeeze in here at the last moment. So Christy is asking, do you use sauces on your simple dinners? I love to cook and I like to make impressive dishes, but I'm not losing the weight.
Well, sauces can really get you into trouble. I mean, a lot of sauces can be really calorie dense. So I would just, look into what sort of sauces you're using. There's, sauces that use nuts. Those are going to be really calorie dense. I wouldn't recommend those. Even ones that have a lot of sugar. If you're eating a lot of, a ton of barbecue sauce on your food. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't look at the sugar first. I would look at the nuts and seeds in your sauces first and focus on using like salsa. I love using salsa because it doesn't have any fat, like a pico de gallo, like a chunky salsa would be great. There is a fat-free golden gravy recipe on our website that's really great. I would look at your sauces and see if you're using any that are calorie dense and then choose some that were not calorie dense and go from there because we want your food to taste good. I don't want your food to be bland. So sauces and seasonings, spices, hot sauce, those types of things are great. But, some sauces can be like cheese, like people love the cheese sauce and those are usually made with nuts. So just be careful, be mindful of what you're putting in your sauces.
Yeah. Yeah. And that fat-free golden gravy is my favorite. Love
It's
it.
so good. And it goes
so
on,
good.
it goes so great on so many things, potatoes and veggies. And it's so easy to make. It's like 3 ingredients and it'll stay in your fridge for like a week plus. So, yeah.
Yep. All right. And then we have another question here. Trying to attack a 6% A1C, hemoglobin A1C. So that would be, in the pre-diabetic range. This person wants to get it into the 4% range. I'm plant-based, feel great. Am I eating too much dried fruit or white rice? I don't know. What do you think about that? I can give my 2 cents as well.
Well, I mean, I would look at your whole diet, but the dried fruit could be making a difference, all those concentrated sugars. Same with the white rice. Is a 4 range even possible?
It
I
is
don't even know.
possible.
I don't even know if mine's 4.
It is possible, but normal is in the 4 to 5% range. So it doesn't have to be 4%. Some people are just going to be, 5.3, 5.4%. Even though they're eating a really healthy diet, their BMI is normal. Other people might be in the 4% range. So I wouldn't say that the goal needs to be in the 4% range, as long as you're in the normal range, which would be like mid 5%, in the 4% up to the mid 5% range.
So do you tell people to eliminate dried fruit and white rice if their sugars aren't?
Well, I would say that I'm always first focusing on the fat content in the diet because that seems to be the biggest driver for increased blood sugar, which, if you're not familiar with that concept, it seems a little strange because diabetes and prediabetes is high blood sugar. So why does fat have to do with that? But really it is that insulin resistance that's caused by fat that's in the diet and in the cells. And so whether you have excess fat on your body or you're taking in excess fat in your diet, both of those things can cause insulin resistance. So that's usually where I would focus first. And then if they've done all of that, their BMI is in the ideal range, they're feeling great, then we can talk about some of those additional things that might be, because for instance, white rice, that is brown rice where they've just taken off that capsule that's on the outside of it, right? That brown capsule has been removed. So what does that do? Well, it just causes you to absorb those nutrients from the rice quicker because it doesn't have to break down that outer shell. And so you will see a little spike in your blood sugar a little bit more with white rice than brown rice in most people. So those can be the kinds of changes that you can make that'll help just that little extra bit of excess blood sugar improve a little bit. But that's usually not where I start. Usually it's the fat on the body and the fat in the diet that makes the biggest difference. And then from there, it's kind of, that's where having an appointment with a lifestyle medicine doctor can be beneficial because you can really talk through your entire diet. What does your lifestyle look like? What is your BMI? All of those things, and then really come up with a good plan.
Yeah, it's always nice to have the doctors and the experts behind you, telling you it's okay or you're doing everything right, because it can be worrisome. There's a lot of information out there, a lot of noise, and so having a team to tell you, you're okay, your numbers are good, you don't need to worry, it can also be really reassuring.
Absolutely. So I just want to let people know, we've been talking about the 12-day program. So if you want to learn more about it, like I said, the next one starts Friday. So, it's coming up quick, but if you're available, this is just an incredible immersion program. You are going to get a lot of information, a lot of support. So if you really feel like you need that full support with the medical staff, the support specialists, this is the program to do. And you're going to get that support not only during the 12 days, but for the entire year after the program. So that's where you'll learn more about that. And then if that upcoming 12-day program doesn't work for you, they're every quarter. So the next one is when, Heather, after this April
July
one?
10th.
Okay, so in July. So check that out. And then of course, we here at Lifestyle Telemedicine, we've got doctors that can help you out, whether it doesn't matter where you live. We cover all 50 states, DC and international. So if you want a lifestyle medicine doctor, we see people virtually. We have lots of different doctors you can choose from, and you can learn more about all of our doctors at lifestyletelemedicine.com. All right, and I'm just going to go ahead and put up that Dr. McDougall link one more time for people. Heather, it's been such a pleasure to talk with you and just get to know a little bit more about your background and all the wonderful things that you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's been really nice to chat with you and share a bit about my upbringing and, just everything that we're doing now to preserve my dad's legacy.
Yeah. Well, I'm just grateful that not only did your dad do what he did and your mom too, that, they kind of started this whole journey, but that you were able to kind of pick up where they left off. And especially after your dad passed away, being able to kind of take that over and continue that legacy. Really grateful that you're here and doing that.
Thank you. It's an honor.
All right. Okay, everyone. Well, thanks again for watching, and we will see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye.